Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and in the spirit of the trees, in the spirit of all of living nature, with deep gratitude to all of our ancestors, I want to welcome all of you to this session of Humanity Rising. Today is May 5th. Today is Cinco de Mayo. For those of you who may not remember, Cinco de Mayo is a celebration in Mexico that commemorates the Battle of Pueblo back in 1862, when the Mexican army and the Mexican people defeated the French imperial forces and began the process of liberating Mexico from colonial control. So it's a day of revolution. It's a day when people celebrate freedom. And in this particular day, we want to congratulate our Mexican compatriots for their success in independence. But I also, as we begin our program today, I want to take further note of the relationship between what we've been exploring all week. Today is day 4 on regenerative health. And what's happened at the level of the US Supreme Court in terms of the abrogation and overthrow of Roe v. Wade, which gave women for the last nearly 50 years reproductive rights over their own body. And that now is being negated. And I've been tormented by that, as the nation has, and people around the world have. And I just wanted to express something that's been coming up in my psyche and soul on this day. And that is a deep acknowledgement and apology as a man, as a North American white male, as they say, whose gender has been in control of planetary affairs for several thousand years, who has coerced women and equally nature and animals. I can't imagine, as I've been reflecting over the past several days, a more egregiously retrograde step than for white men in our Supreme Court, joined by a white woman, to negate the sovereignty that all of us must have over our bodies, particularly women, in terms of their reproductive choices and decisions. So I feel the necessity just to apologize as a man today as we begin our program here on Humanity Rising, particularly since we're dealing with regenerative health and well-being. And I just want to thank Stephanie Mines, who has been the convener, who is a neuroscientist who's written a number of books, 5 books on various aspects of neuroscience. Her latest is a memoir of being an embryologist, and has convened these various sessions. And today we're celebrating Cinco de Mayo and regenerative health with 5 amazing women. So Stephanie, I want to thank you very deeply for everything that you've done leading up to day 4 of our 5-day program. And I turn the program now over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you for your authentic apology, which I will be absorbing throughout this program and throughout the day. A long overdue apology, a much needed apology, tied, as I know for you, to action that puts the voices of women first. And if the voices of women need to be first in any realm, it is in the realm of health. And that is actually proven when women's roles are empowered, the health of their families, the health of their communities, and therefore the health of their place in the world and the world itself has been demonstrated to improve. We are in the midst of a war against women. I and my incredibly powerful, deeply rooted panelists today, Dr. Anita Sanchez, Cynthia Ruiz, Jenny Estrada, and Lorraine Martinez-Cook, we are all wearing red today in the name of murdered and missing Indigenous women. Murdered and missing Indigenous women. The revolution. Yes, go ahead, Jenny.
No, I just blessed that. I said, Aho, Yamen.
Mil gracias. Aho, amen. Please soak up murdered and missing Indigenous women in their names. In their names. We invite you to day 4 of Regenerative Health for a Climate Changing World. This assembly today, full of passion, our red color, dedicated to murdered and missing Indigenous women, is to link specifically the impact of health consequences on the Spanish-speaking communities everywhere, which is significantly greater than on white people, and then pointing directly to those impacts on Latinas. So I'd like to begin by an invocation, a welcome from my dear sister, La Doctora Anita Sanchez, to open day 4, Regenerative Health for a Climate Changing World. Anita.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Jim. Every voice matters. And we're certainly in very heavy, challenging times. And before I give the invocation, I want to say a prophecy that has, for a couple of years now, just keeps coming up for me. And I share it in quite humbly in that I didn't understand it at the beginning because I just felt like, no, we can't just do this. So let me tell you what this prophecy is. As I was growing up and learning from my uncle and my grandmother, and grandmother's Nawa, and my uncle, who's he's an adopted uncle, he's Osage. And he would share with us about the people. And he would share about different prophecies, and they happen all over the world, different ones that talk to the same thing. There'll be a time when there's people that we didn't know were going to come, and they'd bring a black book, and they'd bring different ways, very different than ours, different than the original instruction of care and love of self and of every other being, not only two-legged, but all the beings, Earth herself. And during this time, there would come a point that would be just so like the darkest, deepest winter you ever know, where everything was dying. The trees were dying, the waters, the fish in the oceans, we were dying. And what Spirit said, and in different language and in different indigenous traditions, it was pretty much the same thing. It was, remember, sing your songs, do your dances, be in ceremony, and be in community. I'm going to repeat that. Sing your songs, do your dances, do your ceremonies, and be in community. And I think that's been rising because of all the things we're dealing with. But when I was younger, I would go, I know you've never lied to me, and I feel it through Spirit herself. but how could that be? I mean, I was just so like this, like, oh my gosh, why, how can this be? Like we're experiencing now, women rights, their own bodies. We see what continued to happen to our land, the earth and the waters. We see the, injustices in just about every realm. And we're here to talk about health and all of this, whatever realm you're talking about, we're talking about well-being or lack thereof. It's all interconnected. And so I am just very humbled, and I'm beginning to understand more and more that in facing these challenges, Spirit makes no mistake. Sing your songs, do your dances, be in community, do your ceremonies, all of this. And what happens, that's not a passivity. I think as a young person, being in a particular kind of activism, I thought, well, that doesn't mean passivity at all. So with that, I feel very strongly that on Cinco de Mayo, what we're celebrating, because all the way along the way, again, be in celebration, right? Because as a people, even though this celebration is mainly in the US, I've spent time in Mexico and that's not what's celebrated. It's Independence Day, September 16th is what's celebrated. And that makes a lot of sense, freedom from Spain. But this is important for us because as Latinas, as Mexican Americans, or from any of the other Latin countries, we know there's a particular kind of oppressiveness to us as being lesser. And we refuse to accept that. And one of the ways that we lift that up is by identifying our ancestors who were able to overcome the imperialism, as Jim talked about, of France, having lost the first time and then the second time doing that. So enough said, but I feel very important, and I'm glad you're able to hear this prophecy, and I hope you take it to heart in whatever tradition you are from, because I know this came to us as Indigenous people, but it's for all of us, because ultimately we all are from the earth. We are all made up of the stardust and everything. And so it is time to sing our songs, do our dance, be in ceremony, and be in community. So with that, if you would lower or close your eyes, and with the softest part of your ears and expanding heart, welcome all my precious relations. I'm here in Boulder, Colorado, on the land of the Cheyenne, Ute, and Arapaho. I myself am Niwa. And today is another beautiful day. Let us remember and give thanks to the Great Spirit, the Great Mystery, or whatever name you give to this knowing of something larger than self that connects all of us, our unity and diversity. Great Spirit, Great Mystery, thank you for this day. Ancestors, please guide us, this circle of Indigenous Latinas, Stephanie, and all who are here. Guide us to put our hearts and minds and spirits together, to listen to the voice of you and Mother Earth, that we might, at this threshold of incredible challenges and immense beauty, change and precipitate the renewal that's needed, the expansion of beauty. Thank you for all that you give us for breath. We breathe, the fire within our bodies that gives us energy and movement, and the waters of the womb that wash our minds and bring the dreams both in day and night. You, Mother Earth, we move about your face imbued with the power and the peace of the bones of our ancestors. And the sacred wind, purifying and carrying the voices we need to listen to hear. Let these voices and the voices of all the women who are about life come through. Your voice for life, all of our voices, that are for the life of all beings, the sacredness of all of us, the right to respect, sovereignty, and healthy relationships with ourselves and all of our relatives. All my relations, let us be together. In beauty we walk, in beauty we walk, in beauty we walk, in beauty we walk. Aho. And when you are ready, you can open your eyes and be here with us. And just take a couple of breaths. And I'm delighted, absolutely delighted to have my sisters here, all of them. Stephanie, who's been just giving her whole heart, spirit, every bit of talent and energy for us all and beyond, all over the world to experience this week of regenerative health. But to my sisters, Jenny Estrada and Cynthia Ruiz and Lorraine Cook. These are three dear sisters from California, well, they're actually, Lorraine's not in California, but I always put you there too. And we all wrote a book together that's in English and Spanish. And so what coming together is that we're very clear that we are Indigenous Latinas. We do not separate, we're only this part or that part, we're the whole thing. And we're whole women. And as Jenny, as you went home, amen. That's where we are. So this, I'm delighted just to be in conversation and for this Cinco de Mayo. And what does that mean in terms of well-being and our regenerative health? And how do we, from our perspectives, and it doesn't have to be, we're not looking at sameness. Unity does not mean sameness, but the unity in our diversity about how important this is as women of color, as Indigenous Latinas, to be and do in a way as a whole human being in this hoop of life. So whoever feels called, I invite you to share it. And maybe something that was already said between Jim, Stephanie, or me that triggers something, or maybe something that just is coming up for you. We just invite it all. This is not scripted. And those of you who are watching will quickly know that. We're truly being here present with each other and the energy of you and your ancestors that you're bringing that are viewing this. So with that, whoever feels called, please just speak up and we'll make sure each person has a time and then we'll just keep going back and forth and talking.
I would like to first say thank you. Thank you for inviting us here. Thank you for, I feel so honored to be here exchanging ideas. And I came across an article yesterday, and timing is so perfect. This article was about how Cinco de Mayo started in 1863 by a group of Mexican American women in Los Angeles and San Francisco. So it's actually an American holiday. And, I have mixed feelings about Cinco de Mayo because of all the drinking and partying and the the hoopla and the commercialism of it. But what I discovered in this article that was written by Dr. Batista of UCLA, he came across historical newspaper writings about how Mexican Americans in California were affected by the Civil War. And they were affected by that. The southern states wanted to make that Mason-Dixon line all across to California. And that this is, so the Mexican Americans in California were against slavery. And so they were following the war in Puebla in Mexico and saying, we have to get together. And so these, they started to unite and began to send money to Mexico for that effort, that war effort. And it kind of fizzled out, but the women said, we're not going to give up. we're not going to give up our hope. And so the women of San Francisco and LA, they started and they had their first celebration in 1863. So this was a holiday that has nothing to do with nachos and beer. It is very political. And it was this theme of hope that came through for me, that it's been a very, like you said, it's been a tumultuous week, and my emotions have been all over. And so when the message of hope has been coming through, and the message of strength of women, and the strength of us as Latina women is very strong. And I'll leave it there. I'll pass it over.
This battle that I've been thinking about was like the little people against this big. If I cuss, well, I sometimes say "goddamn," so I'm just saying it. Okay, these little poor Indians were against this goddamn big country that came over, and to me, I feel like this is kind of like what's happening now with Russia and the Ukraine. You know, there's so much stuff going on, but it's that I can do it. And you have to, I have such pride to know that these little insignificant people said, no, this is ours and you will not take it. And they fought with their hearts, and they won. And I truly hope that this does happen with the Ukraine. I just had to say it. It's like this big machine against these little people, and all it takes is your heart. And if you put your heart into it and you're serious about something as important as that. And I feel the same way with Roe versus Wade, that this is just a bunch of bull shit. This is so ugly. This is so ugly. These men should be ashamed of themselves. It's just, okay. Go ahead.
Are you ready, Jenny, or do you have more? I felt you had.
No. I mean, I just needed to just spit that out. Okay,
Yeah.
So now I can breathe.
Okay, good. That's an important part of regenerative health, is we've got to be breathing in a proper way, and not have it stuck. We do a lot of shallow breathing, and then we end up with this rotten oxygen at the bottom of our lungs, and we're not healing. So part of that is to really do that, breathe well. Cynthia, would you like to share with us what's coming up for you, and before we get into more questions?
Well, I start everything I do with gratitude. So I want to give gratitude to Anita and Stephanie for holding this space. And I want to also express my gratitude to Jim. I mean, that was very powerful to have a man acknowledge the situation with Roe versus Wade, because for me, that's personal. I feel like I'm Cherokee. Cherokees are the largest tribe in the United States. And we were a matriarchal society, and we, honor women. And so now seeing all these attacks on women, with the Supreme Court potentially overturning Roe versus Wade, as we talked about when we started having the missing, murdered Indigenous women awareness, it feels like, the women's rights, we made so much stride, but now we're going backwards. And now we need to all come together, because one of the core values of Cherokees is we believe that we're all connected, not only to each other, but everything that's ever been and everything that ever will be. So when you have that holistic view of life and of the world, you realize how important healing is. Healing on the larger scale, healing Mother Earth, and then healing on the individual basis, healing ourselves, our mind, body, and spirit, and physical. And so there's so much to unpack as I was listening to people, start off this morning. And I'm in Los Angeles. So I want to acknowledge the first people of this land, the Tongva Gabrielino, and really just say how honored I am to spend time with these amazing women. I mean, I have so much respect for all of you. So it's with humility that I join the conversation, because there's so much power here and so much grace. And so I'm just excited to be a part of the conversation.
Good. Well, I know that, Jim said it's amazing the number of countries people signed up, and how many are listening now, and then it gets streamed out and everything. And I believe that people came because they want to hear from our perspective. It is rare that as Latinas, as Indigenous Latinas, mestizas, that we're giving a platform to share. And yet we've had major contribution to this country and still have family and ties to Mexico in a big way. And so the question I want to bring up, and I'll start with answering a bit by myself, because I don't, it's like when we talk about regenerative health, Stephanie has laid out beautiful principles in that. And when I first saw them, I said, wow, they're all aligned with Indigenous principles. Well, that shouldn't be any surprise, right? But what it says is that well-being isn't just externalized, it's inside of each one of us. It's an inherent right, of the water that we're made up of the earth, all the mineral, everything else, and that we have great power. And I remember it was my abuelita, Medina, who was a healer, and she missed Mexico so much, but she followed the love she had, my grandfather, and ended up in Missouri. We didn't even end up in California because my grandfather went ahead of her and went to different places, and he sent letters. He said, they don't like us here. We can't come here. Or they don't like us here. They don't like us here. Colorado, they don't like us. He ended up in Missouri, and he said, I'm going to come and get you. Not even knowing that she was already pregnant with that she had already had their first child. Looks just like him. It's amazing. But so she said, I'm going to come get you now. And they don't like us here either, but they hate the Blacks more than they hate us. We have a chance here. So this is a long thing. And they didn't go, oh, well, it's all over. I'm going to give up. And that's what I'm feeling. And so I'm in a place of gratitude, maybe a little different place than you, but I think gratitude is gratitude. So it comes in many, the fundamentally is that I'm so grateful to my ancestors. So part of my regenerative well-being comes from a knowing, not that I don't get, at times and just have to go outside and cry, but that I also know, oh my gosh, all the ancestors before me who faced such hardship and challenges, and I'm still here, despite genocide, despite any of the other things, psychological daggers, as well as the physical ones. I'm here. I am the outcome, the result. And so to me, that's joyful, and it's also a responsibility. And so in that, part of my regenerative practice that I want to share, and I do it every morning, is for the last 20 plus years, I get up before sunrise every day. And this morning it was a little easier because I wasn't standing in the rain. It was all cloudy. Because just because you can't see the sun doesn't mean the sun isn't rising. So that I hope you all get what I'm trying to get out here. Just because we're facing the awful, dark stuff that's coming at us, as power is being questioned and wanting to hold on, and this imbalance of power over people. Just because I couldn't see the sun the last week, this morning I did, but I always go out there. And the seeds of light, I receive the seeds of light, and I'm just quiet and just receiving that, not asking for anything, just receiving. And what happens in that receiving, I become more and more aware that I'm more than this. This physical vehicle is very important. I must take care of it. And this sun is feeding this so that there's life. but I know that I'm more than that. And there are things that work not only like these sisters here, there's these hermanas here, but also what is unseen that's at work here as well. And so I want people to know that's part of my practice. And maybe you won't feel called like, I don't know if I can get up before sunrise every day. Well, you don't have to. That's something I do. And I love it when the moon is out too, because then I can receive from both, you know, the birth and the rebirth and the life and the death and that whole circle. However, just anytime you're in nature, beauty is a pillar of everything. You are part of the beauty, and beauty is everywhere. And if can just quiet and be with that you begin to feel this energy that science even talked about, this sacred motion that we're all part of. And so I think, I know, not just think, I know our ancestors knew some of this, even though they might be said, oh, you don't need to learn from Mexicans, you don't need to learn from Indigenous. Now some of them are coming to us because they're realizing, oh my gosh, you all are sitting on 80+% of the most biodiverse lands. How did that happen? Well, because we didn't spit on it. We didn't excavate it. I'm not saying we didn't do some things, but overwhelmingly our teaching was we have to care for this, because why would you shoot yourself in the foot for something that gives you life and use a machine gun to do it? That makes no sense. So I invite you to do some of the well-being. This regenerative part is by being with nature, and understand after a while, it's not only with you, realize you're part of nature, and everything that is happening there, that's regenerative, it's reciprocity, give and flow, is actually what is happening in our life. And we can make that an even more conscious and life-giving, not only to me, but to everyone around us and 7 generations to come. So you can see I'm kind of filled up with, but that's one practice. And I would love to invite any of the others of you, if you have, you know, like when regenerative health, what does that mean to an Indigenous Latina? What is some of what you do to be strong in some of the most difficult times, and also to just be even more in dance and song in the most joyful times? So if anyone feels called to speak to that, it would be wonderful.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Everything you said is so in sync with what happened this week for me, Anita. That remembrance of our ancestors. So I have a secret place that I go to up in the Sierras, and it's a birthing rock. I am living on Washoe land. And so there is a rock there that has several indentations where for generations, for millennia, the Indigenous women would go and birth their children. And it's secret because we know that when people know its location, things get destroyed. But I this week, I was feeling that heavy burden of the news, and you know, just the times that we were in. And I went there for a reprieve or for a prayer. And when I sat there at this boulder, I was reminded of the generations of women who birthed their children there, and the seeds of hope that were imbued in this stone. And for every birth, there was this seed of hope. And for me to remember that we are descendants of these seeds of hope, and what we owe to our ancestors, what we owe to our grandmothers, 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 and grandmothers before that, because every birth comes hope. And so I sat there and I felt the support of the tree people. I felt the support of the bears and the wild mountain lions and the marmots and all the creatures that live in the mountains. I was supported by the grasses and the stone people. And so I felt that, and I was reminded again that how powerful we are as women, how powerful that we are descendants of these seeds of hope, and that we owe it. We owe it to our ancestors to live our fullest, to like voice, however, and to create from our wombs. Whether we're creating children, we're creating stories, we're creating our own narrative, we're creating our own history. And so, how empowered I felt to sit in nature. Like you said, Anita, if we can just find that tree or that clump of lawn in our front yards or anywhere just to be silent and to listen. I feel that that is a gift of hope that we should not discount. We should just, because that's one of the sacred gifts in your book, Anita, is the gift of hope.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
No, I just saw, I'm not real savvy with a computer, and these ladies know, but I just saw a little post or on the chat saying that these women are not sick. I didn't understand what that, whoever wrote it said something about, how do you know if I'm not saying we're sick, but how do you know when somebody's sick? You don't know if their heart hurts or, I mean, because somebody looks physically okay doesn't mean that they're not spiritually hurt. There are so many wounded people walking around. So everybody has wounds. So before we judge, just listen. Because thank God, I think my sisters here are well, and I pray to the Creator that we are. But these are just our stories. So yes, we're not, maybe you can't see a sickness, but everybody that walks the earth has something that is wrong with them. But as we said, we were invited here to give our stories, and I just wanted to say that, but real quickly, my story, I want to say something that kind of with Lorraine. I was born in my grandmother's house because my mother was afraid they wouldn't take care of my brother, right? And so I was born at home. And so that is where I started. And when my belly button fell off, I'm Yaki. My grandmother and my grandfather and my father planted a tree, an orange tree, and my belly button there. And the reason for that was that I was to always come home. Well, the property still is owned by the family, so I can always go back, and the orange tree is still there, and it gives oranges to the whole neighborhood. So I don't know why I had to say that, but I just needed to say those are my roots, and our roots are deep, and our roots are strong. We are women of integrity. I'm so pleased to be here with all of you ladies. I see my sister Lorraine and Cynthia all the time. And something when Anita said about ceremony. We do full moon ceremony every full moon. Every full moon. We normally do it at Cynthia's house, and she has this huge tree. It is the biggest, most beautiful tree you've ever seen. And a dear friend of ours named it La Luna, because the moon comes up and then you can see it within the branches. But that is a ceremony that we do because everybody in the whole world, whether you're rich, poor, fat, skinny, blue, black, or yellow, or green, we all see the same moon. And, you know, we may see a different constellation of stars, but we all see the same moon. And so every month, I just need to say this, we pray for everybody in the whole world because we pray to the 4 directions and 7 directions, Cynthia, I'm sorry, because up, down, and with yourself, right? But we just want you to know that we pray every month. And I don't know how long we've been doing this because I can't keep time. Track of time it doesn't mean anything to me at this point. Everybody gets prayed for. So full moon is coming up in a couple of weeks. So before I forget, look up, enjoy it, and know that the sisters in Los Angeles, and we're also connected to Australia and to Dubai and to the East Coast, because I have people praying from all over, and feel the prayer that we're sending out to everybody. And we're sending it out especially this month to the women who are missing, to the women that have to make some really major decisions. This abortion thing is not an easy thing to make a decision for. It is not. I had to make that decision once, and it was heart-wrenching. And to me, to think that the people now that this choice will be possibly taken away from them. Oh, this is so sad. And this will be my prayer until it doesn't happen, that this right is not taken away. This is the body of a woman, and the woman should make that decision for herself. We don't need somebody else saying what or what we cannot do. How dare they? How dare they?
Oh,
So for me, when I think of regenerative health, I really think of healing, right? Because healing goes hand in hand. And healing is not a one size fits all. I feel like healing is individual to each person. And a healing there's so many layers to that, because it's not only healing individual from the trauma that we've experienced as in our lifetime, but also for Indigenous Native people, we have historical trauma. We have historical trauma that we carry in our DNA from what our ancestors have gone through. And Anita, when you were talking about going back to song and dance and ceremony, what that really means to me is the healing through connecting with our culture. And for so many of us, our culture has been stripped away from us. And for Cherokees in Oklahoma, it was illegal in Oklahoma from the early 1900s to 1970s to even participate in ceremony. People went to jail because they participated in stomp dance. And then we've seen the situation with the boarding schools. We've seen the situation when children were ripped out of their families and adopted out. So, there's this whole narrative of us being stripped from our culture. So part of our healing, in my opinion, is really getting back to our culture, getting back to the simplicity of what we were taught by our ancestors. And that's, for me, part of my healing. And it doesn't matter how you look on the outside, we all have trauma to heal from. And for my situation, it was sexual trauma. It took me a long time to heal from that. But what I learned through that process is the power of forgiveness. And not only to forgive the person that caused the trauma, but forgive myself. And that's another thing Anita talks about in her book, is the power of forgiveness. Forgive the unforgivable. And there's so much power in there, in that statement, which really helped me work towards my healing. And so as I heal and have healed, because it's a lifelong process, I feel a responsibility to help my community heal, to help women heal, and help other people, communities to heal, and whatever that looks like to them. So regenerative health to me means healing on all levels.
Thank you, Cynthia. That was beautiful. If I could add, and I want let Stephanie get in here too. I just want to say, because sometimes people, you said it so beautifully, the forgiveness that you have happen, and you forgive the perpetrator of your abuse, and you forgive yourself. But I think sometimes people don't understand when we say that, what that means, because forgiveness doesn't mean like you forget. You're never going to forget what happened. It doesn't mean you say that what happened was right. That's not what forgiveness means. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you betrayed yourself, or maybe whole communities who've been genocide or some other kind of thing like we're experiencing with women right now, right? What's going on? But what forgiveness means is that I love myself enough and this world that I'm part of, that I'm going to forgive so that I can use my energy now and what I want to create. And that energy for now can include changing systems and structures, changing who has power to decide over people, using our vote, all the different things we can do to stop the murdered and missing Indigenous women, Indigenous people, Latinas, Black folks, all the different, the racial differences being subjugated. Like, that's what it means, is that I'm not spiraling downward in what did or did not happen to me, but rather taking my energy and moving forward. And we all have the capacity to do that. And in regenerative healing and in the principles and the processes that Stephanie, when I saw all of those, and I've been in conversation with her about them, I just went, yes, yes. And at the top of her stuff is what you just spoke about, Cynthia, which is culture. That one doesn't just say, here, this fits everything. This is rather, how can it do a deeper level of healing and bringing to wholeness by honoring the cultural paths as well. And that's where healing, again, is not all the same. And then the last thing I want to say, and I'll pass to you, Stephanie, is I hope people hear as we talking about healing in our way. It's worked for us. It's worked for me in my situation of sexual abuse for 9 years, and also the murder of my father, which was race related. So, I might look like, oh, what a beautiful top, and you read a lot and beautiful jewelry that's part of my ancestors' jewelry and all that. But this outer package doesn't say what's going on. And so it's just very important to understand that the healing that we have in the Western world, I don't want to take a lot away. Well, I've seen what's happened when people get to really difficult stages and need heart surgery or transplants. I have relatives in that. I've seen what can happen, what's needed in different things. But I also have witnessed in my own life and others where cancers are dissipated before they become something serious. And for myself, I don't say this much to everybody because it seems so long ago. In the 90s, I lost my sister very early in the 80s. She was only in her 40s and she had MS. So she didn't die of MS, but it complicated, and that's what she died. And I began having symptoms. I would lecture, no one knew I had a stool there I would lean against. All these things were happening. And so I went to the doctor and they said, okay, MRIs, all these pictures showing all these lesions. Well, let's do a series just to make sure. And they go, this is strange. You have these lesions and then they're gone. You have these lesions and then they're gone. And, but they still kept on my thing. I didn't accept any treatment because I had a sense that I am glad you're there when and if I need you. But I believe that in my doing the healing work that's taught to me by my culture, let me see how much I can do with this. And it was only about 10 years ago, they finally took off of my medical file. She doesn't have MS. This is just extraordinary. There's this healing that's happened. And now we know that healing capacity happens for all of us. We have that ability to heal ourselves and to heal each other. And in this moment, if we could measure even this virtual world, we can begin to see our heart rate variability changing, our emotions we bring in. We are very powerful beings. And so with that, I want to pass it to Stephanie, who is a powerful being to me, who's always about the original instruction, even if she didn't hear it that way in her early, but it's about care of self and care of all the beings, all our relations. So Stephanie, did you have some things you want to say as you've been listening to all of us?
What an honor to sit in this women's circle. What an honor to be part of your circle of beauty and gratitude. What would happen if we just had the patience and the awareness to listen to a circle of women? The revolution is in the voices of women who speak to everyone in the room, tuned to the rhythms of the earth. The revolution is in the voices of women who are not waiting for anyone or anything else. We are the weavers of merciful compassion and authentic outrage. And authentic outrage, we make the future into now. Our bodies are the verdant politics of the new world, our bodies over which we have ownership. Our bodies are the verdant politics of the new world blooming. No matter our age, our bodies are blooming, nutritive. Our bodies are eternally nutritive. We are ancient and innovative, devising economics that leave no bowls empty. That was always the only design, no bowls empty. The revolution is in the voices of women who know that visions, dreams, planning, implementation, and manifestation are one and the same gesture of simplicity. We dare to be simple in times of accelerating complexity. We dare to be simple. That simplicity arises from the unified field of being. The revolution in this time of war against women is in the voices of women who move as we are moving every day, every moment. With each gesture of gratitude, we move beyond trauma. We move beyond trauma with every gesture of gratitude, with every simple gesture, with our simple words, with our daring to be simple. We move beyond trauma to wholeness. If you can hear us, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you just hear us? If you hear us, then, if you hear us, say it, Anita, how can we be heard? From where would we listen?
From the softest part of your ears and your expanding heart.
If you listen, as Anita said, it's done. It's done.
Simplicity is the hardest thing to corral because it crosses everything. I personally don't know what the theory of relativity is, but I do know simplicity and I do know honesty. And if there's anything that we would like to share, is that we're here simply, honest, and with love.
And for
Thank you,
me, a lot
Stephanie.
of times I go back to the why. Why are women under attack so much? It's because we're rising. We're gaining our power. And as we rise, as the divine feminine, which has showed up today in all these beautiful faces, rising, the patriarchal society is getting worried and getting scared. So that's why we're so much under attack. But I honestly believe I think Lorraine talked about this. It makes me hopeful. Yes, we're going through a dark time right now, but as Stephanie said, we're revolutionaries. We're revolutionaries for the feminine. And I do believe in the long run, we're going to prevail. So all the attacks we're going through right now, we need to stand up to them and rise up to our power for the future generations. Because as Cherokees, we're taught as leaders to always remember 7 generations in the past and consider 7 generations in the future. So standing up to all these attacks on women right now are really going to help the future and the future generations.
Absolutely. When I sat with the birthing stone the other day, I was taken back to 7 generations of my mother's lineage. And I sat there with my ancient grandmother. And that was about 140 years ago, between 140 and 160. And she also faced uncertainty in her land. And we're not that far removed from the uncertainty that was coming to North America 140 years ago. That's how close we are and how connected. But her vision of hope and her seed of vision is, like you said, in spite of everything, I am living proof of her desire of honoring life and her desire and her passion. I am here in spite of revolutions, in spite of wars, in spite of genocide, in spite of traumas. I am here. And my responsibility, our responsibility as women, is to set that vision for the next 7 generations. Exactly why we're here. We owe that to not only back 7 generations, we owe that to the future. And that's our power as visionaries. That's where we hold our power, is to vision that, plant that seed of hope, and plant that seed of forgiveness, and plant that seed of power within us, to continue to plant the seeds of our becoming. That's where we're at.
As Jim said, as I say, I'm an embryologist and a neuroscientist, and I have the language of that professional training. And all of you today have taken all of that information, all of that data, all of those references, and said it all. You have said it all in your authentic, simple, honest telling. I want everyone listening to know that everything that is being said here is clinically proven, and I can point to all the research, but you have heard it in the way that it reaches everyone, and it is true. What is being said here is truth. You are, everyone listening, you are being offered what people are charging thousands of dollars to teach other people with fancy language. I don't disrespect it. Those are my colleagues. I am not saying this to disrespect it in any way whatsoever. But the true wisdom, you're hearing it. Titration, neurochemistry, polyvagal theory, all of these highly respected, systematic deliveries that I study and teach. You have heard it all in the narratives of the women in this room. What is regenerative health? I could tell you that in great scientific detail with clinical trials referenced and footnotes and scientific studies, all of which demonstrate what is being narrated here through the voices of women speaking truth. Everything I said in my poem. Speaking from the earth. Voices of the earth, voices of our living earth. What if we just listened and really absorbed? What have you experienced listening? I will tell you that I was and have been all week, like Jenny, tortured by an emotional roller coaster, dominated by grief and rage, grief and rage, grief and rage. And as I sat in this circle and considered gratitude, a new beginning every day, starting there, as Anita so honestly and simply conveyed her regenerative daily practice. I receive emails, people charging enormous amounts of money to learn regenerative practices. Anita just shared a regenerative practice that titrated my rage, did not eliminate my rage. I have no desire to eliminate my rage. No way. It's fuel. It's regenerative in itself. But Anita titrated it for me. So I'm speaking as someone who tracks her nervous system very carefully. I learned to do that, not in graduate school, but in order to survive. As a survivor of domestic violence, sexual abuse, who grew up in a home where people were threatening to murder one another, and in a neighborhood in the Bronx where people were murdering one another, where my cousin was murdered, I witnessed horror. And I was enraged, and I was enraged by the way that I was objectified and made into a product for my family to use. I have survived by tracking my nervous system and writing poetry. Anita's description of her regenerative practice titrated my nervous system this morning so that the levels of my rage, not eliminated, not pacified, distributed differently in my body so that I could articulate in a more coherent way that my undisciplined rage does not allow, grounded me and allowed me to experience the unique beauty of each one of the women before me, who so graciously are allowing me to listen to them, to be with them, and I can feel them, including me. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Love the poem. I could feel all the energy that all of us are part of that sacred motion weaving. And then the poem kind of, it was moving out to those of you who are listening and hearing, because you have your ways too. You may have just forgotten, and you've just been given some examples. And you can go to help, and it can be in circles. It can be to who you trust. It can be something in nature that you trust, but it can also be another being. The key, though, is to understand that I want to leave with everyone is that we are sacred. We are physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and it's all of that wholeness. So when we tap into any one, that's fine. Like I'll focus in on a particular tree in a forest, but I do not forget that it's part of a forest. So that this potential to continually heal, not like, well, that didn't work, I'm not healed. Or healing is a process and it's a continuous, it's a gift. My kids used to laugh at me because in the morning, one of the things I would say to them, I was fixing breakfast, I go, what a great day to heal. And they'd be like, oh, Mom, you're the weirdest. I don't think other moms say that. And I said, but it is. It's another, wanting them to know that, yeah, you can get depressed. Yes, you could have physical ailments, arthritis, break something unknown, because that's real scary for people. Like, I don't even know what this is that I have. And it's a gift that we get to keep healing and healing and healing. And that's what I heard in all your different stories about the keep on. And what I love about each of you sisters is that from the day I met you was like, okay, you're welcome to cry here. You're welcome to curse here. You're welcome to have your rage here. The key is, like any emotion or anything, they're meant to flow. Even joy is meant to flow. If we hang on to it, then we suffer. But we let it flow, and then the new arises. And we deal with that. And that's just so key. So what's coming to my mind is that whatever people are listening and thinking about their own healing that's happened, hug yourself for doing your healing, hug yourself. And also then reinforce in that hug that it's possible for the next day and the next day. And it's not just about you, it's healing the earth, and it's healing all the loved ones, seen and unseen, that are around this beautiful earth of ours. Post-traumatic growth happens all the time. It just didn't start getting written about until like the 80s or 90s. And even when it did start getting written about, it's so little of the huge mammoth thing about illness and sickness. And yet it exists, and it doesn't return you to where you were. Oh no, that's not evolution. That's not how we're made of this energy. We end up in an even stronger, better place. So I love when someone wrote earlier, I'm not keeping track of all the chats, but someone said, yeah, I can feel the strength, and I don't see fear here. And well, you know what? I think when one is in a practice, it doesn't mean you don't have fear as you move through it. But it's also that don't fear your power. Don't fear my own power. Every time I get into I have to like get quiet, and I realize, what are you afraid of here? I mean, what's going on? Old stories, things. Oh, I know what you are. Well, then reach out for help. That's one of the beauties of things. That's what I did here. I reached out and said, my sister Stephanie is wanting this 4th day of Cinco de Mayo to honor all these women of color, Latina, Indigenous, but all women. She's wanting that. And I knew you were the ones. And of course, you came. And Stephanie and I would have had a great time. But this is what we're talking about. We're able to, as you said so beautifully, Stephanie, we're demonstrating it. So I think before, in another 10 minutes or so, we need to close, but I want to make sure that each of you can take a couple of minutes, whatever you need to say a few words in closing of anything you want to share. And it doesn't have to be all tied up and neat and nice. And I don't know why I'm saying that to you, because you all know that. It can be even just questions, but what is it that you want to share at this moment before we close?
I would like to share that what we have here is a circle. Nobody's ahead and nobody is behind. We are a circle of energy, a circle of love. And the people, if there's people out there, I think there's a few, they're included in our circle. So thank you for listening to me, because I know I ramble, but I ramble from my heart. And I am so honored to be here with, obviously, Cynthia and Lorraine, but Anita, you hold a really dear spot in our hearts. And we always talk about you, so your ears should be buzzing all the time. Stephanie, aho, I honor you and I thank you for inviting us, but more so for you. And I would have never known you unless it was for Anita. And now you've taken a piece of my heart. So my heart goes to you. Many blessings. And on that, thank you for inviting us. I'm done.
Yes. So anyone else has felt called to whatever it is that you want to share, any other thoughts, connected or not connected to what we've already said, just this is your space.
I feel the same as Jenny. Stephanie, I felt that your poem was medicine for the soul. I feel that we are sitting here in a medicine circle, that we are expanding our medicine to all people who are viewing us and that are sharing in this magic moment. Anita, thank you so much. We show up spontaneously, but we show up. And I'm very grateful for these opportunities that you've handed to us. And you said, okay, ladies, and I feel gratitude that you have trust in us. To my sister, Cynthia and Jenny, here we are stirring it up again. And it's just been a great morning, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
And for me, my message to the audience is really, on your healing journey, let go of self-judgment and just realize it is a journey. It's a lifelong journey, just like life is a journey. Healing is a journey. And, really for me, what has helped me with my healing journey is the women that you see around this table. And for me, my sisterhood, developing that sisterhood of support, of unconditional love, of wisdom, of compassion, that my sisterhood healing circle is what has continued to inspire me, has continued to allow me to grow. So for everybody listening, find your support network, whatever that looks like to you, and just keep going.
So the definition of regeneration is beginning again, is growing anew. It has to do with the regeneration of limbs. It comes from the octopus that regenerates when it's wounded. And I hearken back to what Lev Natan said on our first day, where he did an invocation that sees each morning, as Anita shared, we can begin again. We can begin again. And as we face these horrific conditions, and I have pages that I've prepared of data on the overwhelming burdens of the health consequences of climate crisis, on Latinas in particular, on women generally, and on Latinas in particular, that they, particularly in the US, that they bear the burden of the health impact of climate crisis on health, on respiratory function. And I've worked with that directly, taking depositions alongside my husband, who's an environmental attorney, from people, I functioned as his translator, people whose homes were specifically positioned next to contaminated areas so that the burden of that contamination fell on the Latinas as if they were dispensable. So I've taken those definitions, those depositions, those reports of cancer that Spanish-speaking peoples experienced as a result of where they were living, where they were forced to live, where they were delegated to live. So I have that data. And you have said it all. How do we deal with missing and murdered Indigenous women? How do we deal with a war against women's bodies? What I learned today is how to begin again. First with gratitude. First with listening to my sisters. Thank you. Thank you.
So much, Stephanie. I haven't been keeping track of the chat, so we can see if there's anything else in there. But what I know it came through from what's been going on with me. I just want to remind everything. It's not a passive act in this time to care for yourself. And all life needs oxygen, right? And the second thing people always think is water. We do need water. We need rest. And I think about women, I think about Latinos, I think about how we go. We need rest. And then the third thing is water. And then the fourth thing is nutrition, really healthy food, not junk, healthy food. And then fifth, community. And all these are needed. And so my hope in our stories and everything that we shared, that all of us realize we're all worthy. We're all meant to have this. This is the natural way, the original way. This is what we're supposed to do. And I just want to close for myself before turning back to you, Stephanie, and you can say if Jim needs to come on or what you see questions in the chat is. So I want to honor the indigenous wisdom that I started with that comes from different parts of the world. I can't name one place the tradition comes from, but in this time, it's not to not be present to what is, to understand what's happening. We have to hold all of it, the dark and the light. But I would suggest to you, as it has helped and served me and many, is that in this time, remember to sing your songs, do your dances, be in ceremony, and be in community. And from that can be life-giving individual and collective action. This I know to be true. This is what I feel in every level, from the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Spirit doesn't lie. Mother Earth has never lied to me, or I don't believe to any of us. So with that, Stephanie, I would like to turn it back to you and take us where we need to go, and for the last few minutes we have.
Thank you, Anita, and my sisters. I will keep with me, I will commit to myself to remember to sing my songs, which are my poems, and dance my dance, because I love movement, and to begin again, each day to begin again. Thank you. This is the 4th day of the Regenerative Health for a Climate Changing World Summit. Tomorrow, the final day, is dedicated, as Lorraine so beautifully expressed, the birthing rock, going to the birthing rock. That's where we're going tomorrow. We will be so blessed to have with us Ibu Robin Lim. I don't have the words really to talk about what a great honor it is that she will be with us tomorrow. And that honor is in addition to the fact that she was a CNN hero because of her incredible work during the devastating tsunamis in Indonesia. She began her work as a midwife, caring and protecting the precious rite of passage, which is birth, because her sister died in childbirth. And when that happened, she made a commitment to protect the health, the regenerative capacity of women during pregnancy, in childbirth and delivery, and the immediate postnatal period, which is the primal period of human development. So she will be with us. She now has Bumi Sehat in Indonesia and centers also in the Philippines, which is her homeland. We will also have with us Dr. Allison Davis, who has been studying the role of the new mother, the woman coming into motherhood now, facing climate crisis, facing the threats that are dominant for the children of the future. So she herself is one of those mothers, and she's also a researcher who is clinically testing the outcomes of women who enter motherhood with that kind of consciousness. We will also have with us Dr. Peter Whitehouse, who is, like me, a neuroscientist, and who is serving families and children in schools now as our young people are dealing with the threats to their future. And I will be speaking about my research with neurodiversity, neurodiverse children, how we can protect neurodiverse children who are impacted in unique ways and have unique gifts to offer in our climate changing world. So tomorrow, please join us again for the final day of Regenerative Health for a Climate Changing World. And I'd like to invite Jim Garrison, who has changed to his red shirt. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you all. I did change to the only red shirt that I have in solidarity for all the women who have suffered, mostly at the hands of men. And so I just want to acknowledge that and express my solidarity with all of you today. This has been a marvelous, powerful session today. And two things have stood out for me. One is, I think you said it first, Jenny, that whatever's happening, we have to start our days with gratitude. You know, in all things, give thanks. Every crisis, there's an opportunity in there somewhere. And I think with the Supreme Court decision and other things that are besetting our world, cynicism is an easy option. And despair, hatred, resentment. But these have the effect of debilitating our own capacities to navigate. They don't solve anything. So I think it was good for me to remember in my consternation and anger that relax, give thanks, give thanks. Because it's in gratitude that our body begins to feel the openness to the infinite abundance that's available from infinity itself for all of us. And then the second theme that struck me very powerfully was the return, the grounding of regenerative health in the Indigenous wisdom and the Indigenous experience, that the furthest science, neuroscience, epidemiology, endocrinology, everything that we know in the farthest reaches of our science, what's true is always that which we remember from our origins. And you've brought that to the surface for me again, that it is our capacity to remember back and our capacity to fall on our knees before the ancestors, that in the end is what provides for us the wisdom we need to carry on. So it's in gratitude and in the remembrance that I want to thank you all today for this session. It's been very powerful to me. It's been like a balm on my soul. So thank you. Thank you all. And that'll bring our session to a close, everyone. You're all welcome to the after chat session. You'll see the link in the chat box. Stan has put it in. For those of you who can't make it, we'll see you here again tomorrow for the 5th and final session of our 5-day program on regenerative health. Thank you, everyone. Marvelous session. Bye for now.